We are born kind of as a blank slate, and when you come into the world around you starts shaping and defining your ethical views, your views of morality, how you think and feel about people. That those who challenge the system, who do not conform, typically are punished, are given outsider status, they're ostracized, they're kind of put on the outside. And the thing that society has done throughout history is to create labels to help identify those who aren't conforming. If you think back to the age of the Puritans, one of the best widely known examples, thanks to the book The Scarlet Letter, is that the Puritans would take letters and they would affix them to your clothing to denote your sin. The most well-known is the Scarlet Letter A, which represented adultery. You're an adulteress. We all know who you are. We all know what you've done. We all know what to think of you. We all know what place in society you hold because you bear the letter A. They also used the letter T to help identify you as a thief. Another one, if you'd had a little bit too much to drink in public and you got a little tipsy, they would label you with the letter D for drunkard. The other startling realization about the Puritans, these people who were supposed to just radically love God and Christ and supposed to be following the teachings of Christ, is that they would not only affix letters upon people's clothing, but they would take hot branding irons and they would sear these labels on people's foreheads, on their cheeks, on their hands. That way, society never forgot who you were and how it was that they were supposed to see you. Take 300 years into the future, and another group that was really good at labeling were the Germans during the 1930s and 40s. Now, the Germans made people wear armbands that helped to define who they were. A green triangle on your armband meant that you were a convicted criminal. Another one was a blue triangle, and this denoted that you were a conscripted laborer from a foreign country. They knew, hey, this guy's a foreigner. He's an immigrant. They would use a black triangle to denote that this person was a gypsy, a prostitute, a drug addict, a vagrant, a beggar. They used black inverted, superimposed over yellow triangles. And here's where it gets interesting. This is if you were a Jew who had defiled Aryan bloodlines by miscegenation. They would give you a yellow inverted triangle superimposed over a black triangle if you were an Aryan woman convicted of miscegenation who had defiled your race. Some of the most well-known are the two superimposed yellow triangles, kind of like a Star of David. That helped label you so everyone around you knew, hey, this person is Jew. Pink triangles were used. If you were a rapist, if you were convicted of bestiality or pedophilia, more predominantly if you were a homosexual. And society's labelings are no different today. Christian, atheist, believer, unbeliever, saved, lost, Republican, Democrat, teenage mother, child born out of wedlock, homosexual, polygamist, polyamorist. If you're different, you get a label, and it lets us know what we're supposed to believe about you. It lets us know how we're supposed to feel about you, and it tells us everything that we will ever need to know about the kind of person you are. Now, depending on what side of the label you're on, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, what's the problem with that? You know, it's reality. It's truth. The one thing I want to remind you of today is that you're not born with this undeniable, unquestionable reality of what truth is. You are born as a blank slate, And the world that you're born into, the family that you're born into, the historical period, the culture, the society, the religious system that you were born in help define what your truth is. Things are not as black and white as we would like to make them, especially fundamentalists, especially people who are fundamentalists in regards to their religion. And so we end up being very ethnocentric people. We look down on other people, and we believe that we have superior views and that people have inferior views. Dr. David Rosenhan, who was a Stanford-educated psychologist, he and 7 of his colleagues decided to do an experiment, and what they did is they went to different psychiatric hospitals throughout the city, and when they talked to the people in admissions, they told them, hey, I'm hearing a few voices. Interestingly enough, all 8 of these PhD psychologists are admitted immediately. Now, they held them for different periods ranging from 7 to 52 days. Some of these people, it took them 52 days before they were released from these psychiatric units. And even though they acted perfectly normal, they talked calmly and rationally, and yet were given over 2,100 doses of psychotropic drugs to make them normal. We're going to get these guys right. We're going to make them normal like the rest of us. One of the more heartbreaking aspects of the research is that these pseudo-patients, their normal behavior was overlooked entirely, or it was profoundly misinterpreted. Often they would approach the hospital staff with reasonable questions, and in response, the nurses and attendants would move hurriedly away from them. They would look down at the ground. They wouldn't even look these guys in the eyes. Psychiatrists also ignored their questions. One of the things that Dr. Rosenhan discovered is that when you attach labels to people, it's almost impossible for that person to ever escape their label. It doesn't matter how inaccurate the label is. It doesn't matter what scientific evidence is uncovered that declares that the label is inaccurate. It doesn't matter that truth can be standing right in front of someone, staring them in the face. Once the label is attached, it's almost impossible to remove the label. How is it that clinically trained psychologists could have such ingrained biases that they were able to totally ignore the evidence that stood right before them? And these people who were in the pursuit of truth were unable to process truth when it was standing right in front of them. It's a question that every one of us in society has to answer, because the reality is that there are many of us who say that we are in the pursuit of truth, but there are times when the truth is standing right in front of us and we can't process it. We can't get beyond our own biases. We can't get beyond the religious system we were raised in. We can't get beyond fundamentalist views of Scripture, of God, of other people, of sinners, of a Savior, of homosexuals. We can't get beyond the ingrained biases that were placed upon us through our educational systems, the families, the historical period that we were raised in. What are the labels and biases of our time? Well, up until a few decades ago, regarding homosexuality, is that homosexuality was regarded as a mental illness. We look at a gay couple or a lesbian couple, and let's even put this in there, we look at polygamist, polyamorists, and we say this: you can't love the people in your life like I love the people in mine, because you're not normal. You can't, this man can't love another man with the same depth of affection and purity that I love my wife with. It's kind of perverse and sexual. Well, are we really going to go under the premise that, sexuality was never part of the reason that heterosexual monogamous couples ever got married? I mean, come on. There is a New Testament passage that says, "It is better to marry than to burn." An honest look at the situation throughout the Western world, marriage has not always been this, and is not today, this pure, spotless sacrament where, a man and a woman decide out of, this pure, idealistic urge to enter this state of matrimony. There have been probably millions of people in the Christian West who have gotten married because they had had premarital sex, there was a child on the way, and they had to get married. So to try to paint the picture that, somehow a gay union or polygamist union is somehow perverse and it's all about the sex is ludicrous. So it's not a really good argument to make. Probably one of the most offensive, ignorant things that the heterosexual West has ever done is to simply look at other people, be they gay, lesbian, transgender, polygamist, polyamorist, and to say to them, how offensive is it? You can't love like I do because you're not like me. You can't love like I do because you're not normal. The other thing that society has done is to look at gay, lesbian, transgenders, polygamist, polyamorists, and say, you know what? Your family structure isn't conducive to raising healthy children like monogamous marriages. It's one man, it's one woman, and then that gives the child everything that kid's going to need from the male figure, from the female figure. And, if you're polygamist, if you're gay, if you're transgender, if you're lesbian, if you've got two lesbian women raising a son, there's just no way possible that young man is going to turn out to be as healthy as he would as if he was in my family, being raised by a man and by a woman. If you're not normal like me, you can't have a good home. You can't raise good, healthy, productive children like I can. Then the third thing that we've done is to look at people and to tell them, and again, it's incredibly degrading. It's incredibly insulting. You just need to get right with God. You need to get saved. You need to come to love Jesus like I love Jesus, and then you will be right. You'll be normal. God will help you be normal like I am. He'll help you to be saved and spiritual and good like I am. Now, there are a lot of problems with this. A lot. But one of them is this. What do you mean normal? Because are you talking about people who, it would be okay if this guy had 5 wives, just as long as he, had them singly and separately and had married them and divorced them, then marry number 2, divorce her, marry number 3, then divorce her. It's okay if you've got multiple wives, just as long as you do it singularly and you divorce and remarry, divorce, remarry, divorce, remarry, divorce, remarry. Then, hey, there's a little bit of, a shade on it, but hey, we're still all right with it, basically. We'll still let you come to the family gatherings and, you can raise kids and you can do this, and no one's going to frown too horribly on that. We just don't think a lot about it. The reality is that we have millions of people who have been damaged emotionally, spiritually, and sexually by monogamous Christian people. We literally have millions of people in our Western world today who are literally like the walking wounded. How many molestations have happened in quote-unquote Christian monogamous unions? But understand, you can't raise healthy kids like we do. You can't love your life partner like I love mine. The reality is that normal isn't as normal as we were told it was. When you peel back the superficial layers of what we will call Christian union, of the standard nuclear family, when you peel back that superficial layer and you go into our homes, some of our homes are radically dysfunctional. But I want you to understand something. Once you're born into the system, once we've educated you, once we've indoctrinated you, once you've been to seminary, to church, catechism, whatever it is, it's going to be almost impossible for you to move past bias, to remove the label, even if truth is staring you right in the face. Dr. Rosenhan and his staff are standing there, you're medicating them, you're calling them schizophrenic, Looney Tunes, and the reality is they are just as normal and healthy as you and I are. But because of bias and because of the systems that we're born into, the only thing that we can see are crazy people. You know, at some point, if you're going to process and engage truth and reality, you have to stop labeling. You have to stop using broad brush generalizations and affixing them to everyone that you know. Well, I knew this one gay guy, and he was just miserable, and yada yada, and he was just gay because, you know, his dad left when he was 5, and you have to stop that. You know, it's no different than making racial observations and applying them to an entire race, and then thinking that it's not bigoted or prejudicial. And these labels that we affix, this guy over here with these 2 wives, he's got to be molesting his kids. He had to force them into marriage, and God, they couldn't leave if they wanted to. And, you know, it's Warren Jeffs. And this is material for an entire, another separate lecture on this alone. But we have to understand that when society labels and uses punitive action against different people groups, we create subcultures and underground movements. You know, look at what the United States did in creating the black market in the 20s and 30s when we outlawed alcohol. You know, look at the effect that that had on culture. What a lot of people in society like to do is to stand back and try to, you know, they make stick men and then they tear them down and then they say, look how fallible it is, you know. And what society has done is they like to try to pick out the most, shall we say, nefarious aspects of a subculture without taking any response. Number one, while not admitting that it is a stereotype generalization, but number two, while not taking any responsibility that the ruling predominant culture helped create the aspects of the subculture. The sad reality is that a good majority of people can't embrace change until they're forced to embrace change by the fiat of their own personal human experience. And I mean, it's that way for a lot of us. There's no stone of condemnation thrown there. It's just a reality. I had a friend who shared with me in the last year that until change walks into your own front door and stares you in the face, it's hard for you to process it. It's hard for you to engage it. She said, my oldest son came to his dad and I, and she said, you know, we went out and sat on the front porch, and, you know, she said, my eldest son, this beautiful human being that I had given birth to, that I've loved since the day he was born, and that I will love till the day I die, you know, starts to share with me that, you know, he's coming out, he's gay. And she said, you know, my husband, she said, it broke his heart. Not that his heart was broken in disappointment or, oh my God, he's gay, but that his heart was broke for his son, that he had to hide for this vast majority of his life, and that he wasn't able to walk in the light of day with freedom, you know, with people who would just simply embrace him as a human being for who he was, you know, without, shall we say, all of the labels. You see, we give each other the labels. Remember, we give each other the labels, the armbands, the brands on the face, so that we know how to think about people, and so that people can never escape those labels. We know what to think of you. We know what you are. We know your capacity to love and raise healthy kids or to have healthy relationships because you've already been labeled. You know, and she said, you know, she shared her experience, you know, of crying and asking questions, sometimes the wrong questions. But at the end of this discussion, midway into the journey, she says, her worldview of the issue of homosexuality has changed, of her son has changed, for the better, not for the worse. The one thing that history has repeatedly shown us is that the future is different. And unless we learn to think differently, the future is always going to arrive as a surprise. So we are grateful for people like Mohandas Gandhi. We are grateful for people like Susan B. Anthony. We are grateful for the Frederick Douglasses, for the Martin Luther King Jr.'s, who came, who lived their truth so that the rest of humanity could see our glaring need for change, acceptance, and tolerance of our fellow men. We are forever grateful. And now we have to deal with issues of homosexuality, gay marriage, the gay nuclear family, polygamy, polyamory, of people who see the world differently than we are. And the big question is are we going to continue, like our forefathers before us, to place labels on people, to ostracize them, to try to relegate them to a place in society of inferiority? Or are we going to move forward and indeed allow that all human beings are created equal with an inherent right from their Creator to pursue peace and happiness in whatever lifestyle they choose, be it different from ours, structured differently? They have that right. As long as they're not doing harm unto others, we have no right to stand and to demonize, to denigrate, or to suggest that somehow we're superior and they're inferior